So are there any questions that you had over your lunch break? Things that came up? No? Yes? What, Marta? I can't guarantee it. What? Huh? Say that again.
Talked about what role would the I have beyond the mind and the body, and I had answered conductor, and you said, well, you know, why is that there? And I was thinking more about it, and there's some part of me, right, that feels like there's a choice that's made at a given point.
A choice?
Right. So it's like, you know, there's a stream of physical moments.
Just keep it simple and give an example of a scenario.
Sure. So anger arises, and it feels like there's something in me that chooses not to blurt out those mean words.
Well, precisely. What is that? What is that called?
Well, that's what I'm wondering. So is that just the intention part of my mind?
Of course it is. What else is it? It's your mind that does that. Your mind's job is to think things and do that. That's your mind's job.
So there's nothing that's willing that to happen?
Well, if it is, it's just another piece of mind before it. Your mind does that job. Your mind does that job. Your consciousness. You've got sensory consciousness, you have mental consciousness. And intention is one that's there every millisecond. And that's really a good word for karma. It's the first step in everything. I will. It's called intention. It's your mind. It's your mind.
Perfect.
That's the answer. If you want a boss, it's intention.
Okay, perfect.
Understand? All these bits of your mind work hand in hand doing things. All your bits of your body work hand in hand with the mind. That's how. So we have this deep assumption that there is a part of us there's a boss in there called the self, called I. We say it every day. We say it. So we say it. I will do this. Just assume it. We just assume there's a referent object of that word. The Buddha says there is an I. So there's a really simple way he's saying it. There is an I, but it's interdependently existing along with the parts, and you can't separate them. You can't locate them. You can't isolate them. You can't isolate. You can't find a piece. So within a chair, within a cup, you state the object cup, and it's got parts, right? Hasn't it? It's got parts. Well, it's got a lid. A lid can be separated. You know, we can say, assuming the object is not called, if the object is called a cup that has a lid, then this has to be part of the phenomenon that exists, you know. But just say it's a cup that has parts. So the way we say, my cup, one phenomenon, has parts. So naturally we think there's a thing called a cup that owns parts, isn't it? There's a thing called a self that owns a body and a mind. It's just natural. The words convey it. So we think it. We've given it status that it doesn't have. All Buddha says you're not going to find one. You're not going to find a cup that's separate from the parts. You won't find an eye that's separate from the parts. The words are very simple, but to get the realization of it takes time. And naturally we think of the eye as the boss. That's how we think of it. Like I said, philosophically it's the same position as a creator. The universe is the phenomenon, and there's got a boss who makes it. You know, so the person's the phenomenon, has got a boss that runs it. That's how we think. I mean, it's the same way of saying it. The philosophical position, which is the view of ego, which is the view of self-existence. That's the name of the philosophical position. It's a view of something that being inherent, permanent, separate, that runs everything. I, creator, same. A way of saying it. Yeah. So there is an I. But it's interdependent. It exists independent upon the parts. And that's the phrase. It exists interdependently, not independently. And so that's why the word independent, which sounds so cute and simple, is what we have to understand. We have to understand clearly what Buddha means by it. It's got many functions, many ways of talking about independence, dependence, independence, interdependence. So there's just the analysis we have to do. Okay? Okay. What else, people? Yeah. Yes.
Hi, thank you. So on that notion of the I and the idea of karma and reincarnation, Buddhists don't believe in a soul, but they believe in reincarnation as part of the cosmology.
Yes, that's right.
So would the difference be that the Christian notion of the soul is kind of more of an aspect of a static I, and the Buddhist notion of what gets reincarnated into the next life form be more of a dynamic.
Yeah, that's right. That's the way of saying it. So in other words, Buddha's not really disagreeing that it isn't a separate. Buddha's not disagreeing there's not something there that continues. It's just the way it exists is the point. It's the way it exists. So he's arguing with the Hindu position. It's not so much that there isn't a person there. It's the way that they state there is a person, which is independent of everything else. That's what he says is not possible. So he says there is a person that goes from life. I mean, even the words are, there is a person that goes from life to life. And person or self or I is the label we give to those bits and pieces. In this case, your bits and pieces. In my case, my bits and pieces. So there is an I, but it's an interdependent I. So it's the way the I exists. Mm-hmm. So the Buddha would say the mind reincarnates, whereas the Christians would say the soul, is made by God, comes to humans, and then goes to hell or heaven. So it's, in a sense, it's reincarnation. Right. But it's this peace, this independent, permanent peace. It's a gift from God that defines you, that is permanent. I mean, this is how they describe it, the way it exists. And Buddha's arguing with the way it exists, not so much whether there is a thing that exists. It's the way it exists. That's why his teachings about interdependence. So there is an I that goes from life to life. And the I is the label given to the parts, and the parts is body and mind. So clearly the gross body disappears at death, but the aggregates, the subtle, so if you want to argue, the mind is the basis of the label. The mind, subtle mind, is the basis of the label I, in your case, yourself, that goes to the next life. So the whole trick is to learn to understand how it means there is an I, there isn't an I. What kind of I isn't there, and what kind of I is there? Buddha's not saying there isn't an I, he's saying there's not an independent I, that's all. So we have to understand what he means by that. That's the point. Yeah.
Good. It's very helpful.
What else, people? Something?
I have confusion in this, if you could maybe clarify what it is that exactly gets reincarnated. For example, let's say I had 10 lives. Yeah. 1,000 lives.
That's right.
I don't remember any of them.
No, that's right.
So it feels more like the karma is what's brought forward, not the person.
No, I understand. So it's the words for it. What's your name?
Mark.
Mark, okay. So, okay, if we take the Vajrayana model, Mark is the name we give to this package now, isn't it? So from this point of view, Mark has gross consciousness, which is the gross level of your sensory consciousness interdependently existent upon this body called Mark's body, right? So as you go through the death process, as I said, it's this deconstruction process. Gradually this ceases to function. The eyes, the ears, the senses cease to function. The physical body eventually ceases to function. You stop breathing. So that's when we're ready for the body bag. In the West, we're not dead yet. Mark is now, what is existing now, the body is there so we can see it, but it's no longer functioning. That component of you has ceased. So now your subtle consciousness, which is this subtle level of your, and it consists of all your different conceptual states of mind, and there's this subtle physical energy that they call, which is it's the same model as the Tibetan medical system. You've got the subtle wind energies and the subtle nervous system and the subtle different energies, and gradually this deconstructs until eventually you get to what they call extremely subtle consciousness, which is the last moment of your consciousness, the subtlest level of your consciousness. The subtlest level, and that's inextricably linked with the subtlest level of your physical energy, which is the subtle wind energy. Is how they talk. Okay, these are indestructible. So, if you like, you can say that these are the recipient. These are the receptacle carrying all the karmic imprints of everything Mark has ever done. And anybody in this continuity of mind before Mark, they're all the ones that the karmic seeds that haven't yet ripened as experiences. They're all programmed. They're all contained in this consciousness. These tendencies and karmic imprints in this consciousness. So the consciousness is the basis for karmic imprints. Karma can't exist without a consciousness. Karma is a law that refers to what happens in that consciousness. So the consciousness, the very subtle level of consciousness, when the time is right and Mark is finally dead, that consciousness will leave the body and it's programmed already, let's say, to go to your next mummy's human womb where you become Mary or Fred or whatever. So this very subtle consciousness is what continues. That's beginningless and endless. It's impermanent in its nature. It changes from moment to moment. It's highly interdependent. But that's the continuity from life to life. They're the words for it.
Continuity of personality on a gross level.
No, Mark is just is like the flourishing of a particular bunch of thousands and thousands of karmic seeds that were triggered in the past life before you stopped breathing. So let's say Mark does a lousy job of this life and goes around killing and raping and being lazy and cheating on his wife or whatever, then you're ripening, you're then sowing a bunch of very other heavy negative seeds that will cause you to run to a lion's mummy's womb or an ant's egg or something. You'll turn into an ant. We won't see Mark there, I promise. That little package is finished. But everything Mark does leaves seeds in his mind that will ripen in the future as ant or dog or more human. So what you are now is the manifestation of your past seeds, and what you do now will manifest in your future rebirth and your future tendencies in your future. I mean, you can have many similar tendencies. You know, if you're born a human again. I mean, they even talk, you know, I remember they talk, you know, like you could say a Tibetan person in the past life will grow up, will wake up in this life and really like, say, tsampa, you know, really like barley flour. That's very possible. You bring strong, certain tendencies that are very strong, recent from the previous life. But that's what our good and bad qualities are. If you're really attached to sex in one life, next life you're going to get born with really rampant attachment to sex. So our tendencies are carrying on, but they might be in a brand new package. It might be as a monkey or a dog or something as opposed to another human being. Do you understand? So every single thing that Mark is, the way his skin is, how he is, 5 fingers, 3 fingers, this one, the foot this way, that way, your nose, everything about you is like, it's a construction that's come from some detailed planning in the past, and the planning is done by you, your actions. Do you understand? Yeah. So what we are in this life is the fruit of a bunch of previous seeds, and what we do now will ripen as future ones, as well as all the billions that are there that haven't yet ripened. That makes sense? Okay. What else, people? Yes.
So at the time of death, as the gross ceases, the consciousness exists in the wind energy. Does the consciousness? I mean, like, of course, I'm trying to think of this in scientific, and I know I can't.
No, because it's a different model.
But it's like, I think about, is it energy? Is it the consciousness?
Yeah, but there's no need to use vague words like that. There's got consciousness, which is called very subtle consciousness, the subtlest level of our conscious being. You can't use an equivalent in the West because it doesn't exist. There's a subtle level of your cognition, the subtlest level of your consciousness, inextricably linked with this subtle wind energy. The fundamental building blocks of the universe, as far as this Vajrayana model is concerned, is that all the physical matter is the 4 elements. We used to talk like that in the Middle Ages. And all consciousnesses, and then these consciousnesses are inextricably linked to their own set of their 4 elements. It's just the way it is. So the breath process is described in terms of those, the deconstruction of those various gross to subtle to very subtle elements. And then when you die, that very subtle consciousness, along with its very subtle wind energy, and these are the building blocks based on karma for the new body and the new mind. You understand? Mm-hmm. That's the way to say it. Does that make sense?
Oh, yes.
Okay, good. All right. Okay. Yes, yes.
Earlier you mentioned intention as being basically karma.
Yes.
Right. And so with a sense consciousness, like an I consciousness, I sense consciousness, it would be accompanied by the mental factor of intention.
Yes, has to be.
How does that become karma? Like, how does an I sense consciousness apprehending the thermos create?
But it can't. It doesn't seem to be that it can. There has to be mental consciousness there.
So it has to. But even though it's accompanied by all the omnipresent mental factors, wouldn't that mind?
Must be. Yeah. So then.
So does it have to induce a mental consciousness to create a karma?
Well, but it wouldn't induce because it would induce because if attention's there all the time, and then feeling is there all the time, and contact is there all the time, and recognition is there all the time. Okay, so let's just say there's a mouse there. You've got to kill a mouse. So for a complete action of killing to manifest, there's got to be 4 main things in place, speaking very simply. The first has got to be an object. So, given that you've got eye consciousness, your eyes will see that shape and colour, and then in the second part, the second thing that has to be involved there is your mind involved in it. And the first of the 3 bits in the 2, so one is there's an object. 2 is your mind involved. There's 3 bits there. There's the first bit is recognition, which is one of the omnipresent mental factors. And that says, based on your eye consciousness, or let's say you're blind, but you've got your ear consciousness and you can hear the scuffling, you can deduce mentally it's a mouse. So recognition is there's a mouse. So your eyes just seem to, I mean, I'm just thinking out loud, the eyes seem to help you have that internal mental recognition, there's a mouse. Every intention you have doesn't depend upon the senses, does it? Doesn't seem to be. If you're fast asleep, your senses aren't functioning. It can still be intention and attention and recognition, all these things. If you're in a dream state and you're in a subtle dream state and you're a meditator, your senses are not functioning, but you'll have an intention and you'll sit there and you'll meditate in your dream state. There's no senses involved. So senses are just this additional thing that leads us up garden paths that we interpret wrongly with our mental consciousness. But they're part of a function of having to kill a mouse. Otherwise, if you're blind and deaf and can't feel anything, I don't think you're going to kill a mouse. It'll be accidental if you do. I'm just talking out loud. I don't know.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, I'm just trying to think out loud, because the senses can't create karma. Can they?
I don't know. That's, I guess, my question. Is every intention a karma?
Intention by definition is karma.
Right. And so if a sense consciousness is accompanied by the mental factor of intention, I don't know.
The intention is what creates the karma.
Right.
Mental consciousness creates karma. Sensory consciousness doesn't seem to create karma. It seems to be we can experience things physically. We can experience results physically. Feeling is a function of sensory consciousness as much as mental, pleasant feeling through the body. But intention seems to be purely mental consciousness, surely. And without intention, there's no karma. It's the best way to say it. It's mental action. Mental action is the start of the process of creating karma. Mental action, which is intention. I mean, I will walk out the door. It demands my eyes, my ears, my feet, all my senses involved. But they're just like, I just think of the senses as the servants of the mind. Mm-hmm. They're just the ones that carry out the wishes of the mind. Because I identify me here as me, my body, and my body. I will walk out the door, so then my mental consciousness starts the process and my legs do the job. Mm-hmm. So it seems the body and the mind, the body and the speech, which is the senses, carry out the wishes of the mental consciousness. The body and the speech can walk through the door, but if I'm unconscious, there's no karma. You're dragging me out the door. Mm-hmm. Thinking about it as well.
Yeah. No, I think I do understand. I think I was, because of the 6 main minds, when we talk about a sense consciousness, it's not merely the sense faculty. It by definition has to have a consciousness.
Absolutely,
right,
absolutely.
Right.
The faculty is just, I mean, speaking simply, the sense faculty is just their fancy word for a bit of physicality, a subtle physicality.
Right.
We don't even posit that. We can just talk about the eyeball. It's enough.
Right.
Just this added physical component that they talk about in Buddhism that we don't talk about.
Okay, thank you.
That has to be there based on the consciousness. It can't be there without it.
Right.
And there can't be the consciousness without that either. Right. They're just dependent. Like even speaking in ordinary Western terms, there can't be a cognition of your eye consciousness without an eyeball, isn't it? And that's the physical. Right. So the physical does not create karma. It's not possible. It's just a bunch of atoms.
So the mental factor accompanies the consciousness aspect of the sense. Well, the sense consciousness. Yeah. I mean, you when you talk about it as a sense consciousness versus a mental consciousness, you think that's, I think, what's hanging me up a little bit. But I'm
so you're giving more, I mean, basically, because of the word consciousness, you're giving a bit more power to consciousness than it needs when it comes to being an eye consciousness. It's just like a nothing. It's just nothing. Yeah. It's because we're gross. We have these gross senses. It's because we're so gross. It's not good or bad that we've got eye consciousness. It's just, it's a drag. Pain in the bum to have a body, isn't it? What do you say in Australia? I understand. I mean, this is the thing in our culture. We give immense, as Lama Yeshe puts it, we give all the power to we make the body the boss, which means we make our sensory consciousnesses the boss, and we give them all this power they just don't have. Mm-hmm. Like we really do believe, like I said, that look, what a pretty thermos is a function of my eye consciousness. Don't be ridiculous. Mm-hmm. It can only cognize shape and color, like a dumb animal. Mental consciousness then takes over and does all the interpreting and all the dramas. Mm-hmm. Senses are like nothing. seems. Isn't it? But they're useful, we can use to help us get enlightened, isn't it? To help others, all that. We need them. The hands and the eyes and the speech, the physical. It's like they're the servants of the mind, as though if they're the servants of the virtues, very helpful. Isn't it? What else, people? Anything? What do we talk about for the rest of the day? I don't know. You have to tell me. What do you want to talk about? Yeah? What? Go on, go. Hang on a sec. Go, sweetie. Go.
Sometimes I feel like being a Buddhist is really hard to do.
Which aspect is hard, babe?
Like, I was talking to a relative, and she's not Buddhist, and she came to the house, and I have a few extra Buddhist book.
You have what?
I have an extra Buddhist book from the center.
Yes.
And I'm not supposed to throw it away, or I don't know how to do. I don't know. I could bring it back here, but.
So I'm a bit confused now. What's going on?
So.
Start again.
I gave her the book. I said.
You gave a book to your relative.
Yeah.
But it's a Buddhist book.
Yeah, they're Buddhist.
So where's
book.
the problem with this?
And I made the mistake, and she said, "Oh, I'm gonna go home and sit in a bathtub, nice bathtub, and read it."
Right.
And I said, "You're not supposed to bring these books in the bathroom."
It's okay. No. Bathrooms, I think you're talking to a Tibetan who has a filthy hole in the floor where all the shit goes. That's the bathroom you shouldn't bring your book into. But bathrooms are like the most luxurious rooms in our house.
Right.
So it's perfectly fine.
Oh, okay.
Come on. Analyze the meaning. It's okay. Analyze the meaning. It's okay. Don't be superstitious. It's okay.
Sometimes I feel like being Buddhist is like when you're interacting with non-Buddhists, and because I have a tendency to mention certain things that is relating back to Buddhism, and I feel like I'm like forcing.
Yeah, you are, so you shouldn't say. You should be very careful.
Right.
I know even one time when my sister, I went back home to Australia the first year after I became a nun, and one of my sisters had been to Thailand and had bought a Buddhist head. You know, first of all, Buddha's, for the Tibetans, it's the worst thing possible to see a head. We love all these heads. It's very Greek and all that, you know. So she had this Buddhist head statue, and she was using it as a doorstop, right? So that, of course, Buddhist, it's a no-no. I wasn't going to be kind of panic attack. I picked it up and I said, "Oh, Julie, what a lovely Buddha head. Where'd you get this?" So she told me she bought it in Thailand. So I put it up on the mantelpiece. Well, the next year I came, there it was, the doorstop. So I picked it up and put it on the mantel. This went on for years. And I never criticised. And then one year I came back and I said, "Julie, where's the Buddha head?" And she was on the mantelpiece and she said, "Isn't it a lovely Buddha head?" So, you know, you just got to relax. Come on. Don't be superstitious. Don't panic. Relax. Or even one time, because my sister Julie is very compassionate. She's the one who never thinks about these things that I talked about. And she's very clean and makes the house lovely and loves animals and has compassion. But she can't cope with ants, or this used to be. She couldn't cope with ants. So she'd kill them, right? And I'm not going to be neurotic with her. So I said, "Oh, wait, Julie, wait before you kill them." So I'd say mantras and blow on the ants. I'm not going to tell her what to do. Come on, please, excuse me. It's not my job, you know. So I'd blow on the ants a mantra and bless them before she killed them. What can I do, you know? You've got to be relaxed. Be skillful. I mean, you know yourself as nothing worse than a fundamentalist person telling you what to do. You don't want them in your house anymore. It's too horrible, you know. Got to relax about these things, isn't it? Please, please, please. So what are you going to say? I might. Please. Go on.
I think we need this for the
Go on.
So is there a way for us to discern when a particular action has been done to us by a bodhisattva versus by
Unless you're clairvoyant, darling. It's not possible.
And so then the challenge that I run into is trying to find a way to interpret what could conventionally be referred to as a negative action.
Yeah.
And
by someone else.
With the understanding that at any given moment that perceived negative action could actually be a positive one.
That's right. It's all that is a practice from your point of view of how to interpret something. It's got nothing to do with helping them. It's your practice. That's up to you. And if you really have a brave attitude, we can see the whole world like that. And that's a very powerful view, to think that whatever happens is somebody teaching you something. It's very profound. But it can get very cosmic, and you think, well, someone's about to come and kill you. Well, it could be the Buddha coming to kill me. Please kill me. No, use your common sense, please. I mean, it's not easy, but it's a very, this is the Bodhisattva view, and it's quite a profound view because it's based on emptiness and it's based on realizing. I mean, the Tibetans, keep the mic. Keep the mic. We might have to have. So, the Tibetans have a saying. We don't know who anybody is, so don't judge. I mean, you know, it's hard to live life like that. But it's a possibility. When you think of what a bodhisattva is, as a person who already from their own side is so advanced, but they consciously choose to be reborn as some crazy person down the road or somebody's mother or not looking like a holy person, in other words. And we just see what we see. We see a crazy person or a mother. So we're not clairvoyant. So when you have that view, it's a very humbling way to live your life because, you know, instead of just jumping on people and finding fault, you think twice. It's very profound. You don't need to know if it's true. That's just a practice for you that stops us jumping into our deluded views and believing everything we see is right. It's very profound. It can really help us a lot. But meanwhile, you know, a gunman's coming at you. Do your best to get away. It's okay. You know, it's all right. Do you understand my point? You sure? You don't look doubtful.
The doubt, I'm concerned that the doubt is me just nitpicking, and that's why I'm not
What do you
responding.
mean by nitpicking? About what?
Beleaguering a point, I guess.
What, darling?
For the sake of arguing, that's why I'm for example, there was a woman.
Okay, no, stop right there.
Yes.
Go back to what I just said. What did you get from what I just said?
What I got from what you said was that, you know, in a conventional sense, if I see a gunman running at me, I should
No,
run
but
away.
before that, what's the general view that I've quoted from the Bodhisattva path as a very powerful way to interpret things in your life, which is a practice for you? What was that practice?
That I should continue to respond or focus on my own action, my own reaction, and that if I respond in a meritorious way, then that's good enough.
No, I'm not saying, I didn't say that at all. I didn't say that at all, so thank you, I'm glad we checked. Okay, do you accept the theory of a bodhisattva?
Yes.
A person who's advanced, but who can be born in a life who looks ordinary. Do you accept that as a theory?
Yes.
So if that's a possibility then, so the person in the shop who's mean to you, the first ego response is to feel, how dare you do that to me, and it's not fair, and poor me, isn't it? Would you agree with that? So that's the ordinary deluded response to somebody. Now, let's just say there's two options. The person either is an ordinary deluded person, which means they were mean to you, or the person's a holy being. There's only two options. You think about it. So which is a better attitude for you in terms of your practice? What will be a more healthy response for you for your practice?
To respond compassionately.
No, that's not the issue here. We're discussing that. That's not the issue. So I'm very glad we're having this conversation. I'll do it again. You have two options. One is to think it's an ordinary person and then get upset. How dare they be rude to me? The other one is to think, before you say anything, well, you never know. What's your name?
Galen.
You never know, Galen. This could be a bodhisattva. Good morning to you, madam. So which is a better attitude for you to cultivate for your practice?
The second option.
Thank you. Now we're communicating. Are you seeing my point?
Yes.
Not compassion. If they're a bodhisattva, honey, they don't need your compassion. It's a practice for you to decide to respond angrily and upset, or to decide with wisdom, to decide it could be a bodhisattva. So thank you for showing me my mind. Do you hear my point?
Mm-hmm.
This is a profound practice. Instead of reading the news and freaking out, Mr. Trump, this and they, that, and all we do is run around the world having opinions, don't we? And they're usually attachment opinions or anger opinions. And we always think we're right, don't we? This is the world. This is samsara. You see my point?
Mm.
Okay, let me give you even another way of putting this. If we look at this framework of the wisdom wing and the compassion wing, like I've been talking, these gradual levels of practice, you understand? The junior school level of practice, which is mainly related to karma. So as far as you are concerned, our practice is to control our body and speech. That's our main job. That's our main job, is to stop creating more negative karma. But because we live in a world, you can't help but seeing other people do bad things as well, can you? So you read the paper and you hear there's a war in Syria. You hear Mr. Trump lied about this. You hear somebody else jumped on somebody else's wife. So the usual deluded thing to do is, oh my God, look at that person. How dare they do this? Oh, this is an evil person over there. Oh my God, that poor person over there, they're full of suffering. How dare they people do this? We have this commentary, don't we? Would you accept that? We have this commentary, don't we? So you're reinforcing your own delusions, aren't you? So what good is that? So I find it very powerful to think at the wisdom wing level, at the first level, body and speech only, body and speech. You observe the world, and you see there's a war in Syria, and that's called actions of killing each other. Would you agree it's to do with actions of killing? So if you take the wisdom you have about understanding karma, you'll go, oh my God, look at that suffering. This is incredible. That's how karma works. Look at the suffering they're causing each other. So that's just an interpretation of something according to the law of karma, isn't it? So then you'll say, thank you for showing me how not to be. And that'll reinforce your wish not to kill and lie and steal. Would you agree with that? That's a healthy response, isn't it? That's the response at junior school to the entire world. And more so too, just as much as to the next level, which is the mind. So then you'll go, well, my God, that must be due to aversion. Anger makes you kill people. This is incredible. Look at the suffering of anger. Thank you for showing me my mind. Thank you for showing me how not to be. Can you hear me? That is a healthy way to look at the world. That's according to the wisdom wing. That's according to the first level of karma and the delusions, which is the wisdom wing. That's a perfect way to interpret the world. So a person in the shop, she's mean to you, and you observe it. Doesn't matter whether she's bodhisattva, doesn't matter. You go, that's called bad behavior. And you go, I have two things I say. I go, in my mind, thank you for showing me how not to be. It's a learning for you. You bring it back to yourself. And the second one is, I recognize that. Every second of the life is a powerful learning for you to help you practice the wisdom wing, which is abide by the laws of karma and control your mind. Do you hear my point? This is huge. The whole life becomes meaningful for you then. Instead of judging and angry and upset and confused and arrogant. Do you understand? That's your own interpretation that helps you increase your wisdom wing practice. Now you go to the compassion wing, and now your job is to see how people are harming each other. Do you understand? And then that also includes the attitude, maybe that's a bodhisattva showing me something. Thank you very much. So every level you can use it as grist for your mill to help you develop your level of practice. And that's practice every single second. Do you understand? You understand? Okay. What else, people? I mean, I'm happy to talk. You know I can talk. I'm happy to chat. But you just got to give me something to talk about, besides just answering questions. It's 2:24. We could all go home now if you like, or you ask me, you talk about something, a topic we're missing out on or something. What, Mary?
Topic to talk about, but I was intrigued by the thought of a bodhisattva coming into the body of a crazy person. And
well, no, they'd be acting crazy. They wouldn't.
But they wouldn't. That was my question. What would they would intentionally do that?
Of course, that's the whole point. So let's now talk about the bodhisattva path. We've so far talked about the wisdom wing, which is really just playing safe. The world is as you see it. People are mean to each other. They're probably deluded. Okay? So then the learning is like I just said here. Thank you for showing me how not to be, or I recognize that. I find that the most powerful way to read all the news, all the papers, all the magazines, all the television, all the Mr. Trump stories. You bring it right back to yourself. This is huge. This is why about the death one. Not these people out there dying, this will happen to me. Straight away it becomes a learning for you. The whole world is grist for your mill, for your practice. It's very simple, but you have to remember it. So that the wisdom wing takes things on face value. Now the next level, bodhisattva path, is outrageous. Forget the Vajrayana being outrageous. Because the bodhisattva path assumes a person who's on this path to becoming a Buddha can have realizations of renunciation, or even indeed realizations of emptiness, bodhicitta, and renunciation, the three levels of practice, can be really renounced, can have accomplished the wisdom wing to an incredible degree, can have realized emptiness, and can have bodhicitta. So that person, their main job is to bop around life after life after life, as many as possible, to continue to work with sentient beings, and that's grist for their mill to help them become a Buddha. It's like they're training, So the lowest level bodhisattva, there's 10 stages, and this is from the time you first realize emptiness. You become an Arya Bodhisattva. So there's 10 stages of your progress, 10 stages of your development, which take many lifetimes before you finally achieve perfection. So they say even the capability of a bodhisattva, even the first of the 10 stages, is so astonishing. Their wisdom is so remarkable. Their power is so extraordinary. They can completely manipulate the laws of karma, and they're able to manifest their own mind in at least 100 different forms simultaneously. Now this is like science fiction for us. Of course it is. It's impossible. It's hilarious to say this, but this is the point. The lowest level bodhisattva can manifest as an ant there, a dog there, a table there, and a pillar somewhere else. Their power is such. And it's motivated by wisdom and compassion. There's no other choice. So right there, given this, anybody could be a bodhisattva. But this does not fit with the first level. If we see a bad person, we want to believe they're bad, don't we? And they'd better suffer. There's no other choice for us. There's narrow-minded, fundamentalist mind of attachment and aversion. We love the people who are cute, and we hate the ones who are mean, and we are right. This is the fundamentalism of this delusions that we have, you know. There's no wriggle room for any other view. So the Bodhisattva path is outrageous. If it is a possibility that one person can manifest in a body and act like a crazy person or a sick person for the sake of sentient beings, then the whole world is not the way it appears. I mean, you should be drowning in, my God, how extraordinary. But we don't like to think it, you know. We love to hear about all the stories, like all, you know, you can hear all the Zen masters beating their students. We love to read about it in a book, but just wait till somebody beats you. Excuse me, what do you mean, Zen master? They must be evil. We love reading about Milarepa being beaten up by his guru, you know. We love reading these stories. We're so moved by them, but just wait till somebody says one cross word to you. I'm sorry, you know. It's like hilarious. So it's this intense teachings. The Bodhisattva path are intense teachings. There's this lovely story about His Holiness. Because as we know, the Dalai Lama is said to be a Buddha. I wouldn't know he's a Buddha. I have no clue. I'm prepared to have confidence he is, but to actually know he's a Buddha, that's ridiculous. That implies I'm a Buddha. I have to know myself. That's not possible. So, you know, but all the Lamas we know, they all say, isn't it? They all say he must be a Buddha. So let's just say he is. Let's say he is. So this is a story. Lama Zopa told this story years ago. And Buddhas, you know, who've gone beyond, who are fully accomplished now, they are manifesting every millisecond in countless forms throughout countless universes for the sake of countless sentient beings, all the time. It's their job, okay? As mad as that sounds. Forget 100, it's countless. Very simple. It's the capability of a Buddha. So what we see is the Dalai Lama, nice Tibetan man, isn't it? We see this one person, we think he is the Buddha. Well, speaking strictly, if his mind is the Buddha, then the Dalai Lama's body is one of his millions of manifestations. So this lovely story Lama Zopa told. Back in the early 60s, after the Tibetans had come out into exile, and His Holiness and all the older lamas were very anxious to get monasteries get going, so they can continue carrying on passing on the lineages, the oral lineages of the teachings before it all died out. That was their main concern. So the amazing Indian government, you know, had offered to take care of the Tibetans, greeted them, which is extraordinary, you know, open-heartedly. This poor country, you know. So they were negotiating. His Holiness and his government in Dharamsala were negotiating with the Indian government in Delhi about these hundreds of thousands of acres that now down south in India, that now is like a little Tibet down there, isn't it? So in the early stages, it was really very difficult. And the story is something like this: that the appropriate Tibetan minister had gone down from Dharamsala to Delhi, like this 12-hour train journey. In those days, they didn't fly; it was an aeroplane now. And he was in Delhi trying to get a meeting with the Indians. That's where the government is. So, you know, Indian bureaucracy being the way it was, no doubt, he couldn't get a meeting. Went back up to Dharamsala very frustrated. And essentially, His Holiness says, it'll be cool, don't worry, go back down to Delhi immediately. So he did. So that particular day that he had a meeting scheduled in the Indian government minister's office, the Indian government minister's little boy was in the office with his daddy. So he was having a chat to the Tibetan. And the little boy expressed the wish for a dog. Well, the Tibetan was delighted. I'll get you a dog. He wanted, you know, happy to grease the wheels, you know. I'll get you a dog. Well, he's been kind too. So he went out and he saw this sadhu with a dog. I'll buy your dog. He bought the dog, gave it to the little boy. Little boy's happy. He runs to daddy. Daddy's happy. Everything works. The meeting happens. Things move forward. Whereas Lama Zopa said, the sadhu and the dog were manifestations of the Dalai Lama's mind. So that means he didn't need to be born in a sadhu's mother's womb. He didn't have to be born as a dog. These beings, this level of beings are capable of utilizing the energies of the universe and capable of manifesting their own mind in the form of a sadhu and the form of a dog to facilitate things. That's their job. That's their job, you know. So this is an outrageous level of reality. If this is true, it makes insanity of the entire planet. You really can have to say you have no idea who anybody is. Because when you realize a bodhisattva, a Buddha, forget even a high-level bodhisattva, they can't be motivated by delusions. They can't be. You've got to realize that's a possibility. And this is, in an ordinary world, this is not possible. We just want to believe what we see. They have to be evil, you know. They can only be motivated by wisdom and compassion. So that means they can do whatever they need to be done to help sentient beings, including be tough with them. When my mother met Lama Yeshe, she kind of opened her heart about me. And Lama's very powerful. He's very charismatic. And normally my mum ran meetings. You know, she didn't ever confess to anybody about her feelings. And she was very nervous about meeting these weird Tibetans, you know, but she did it for my sake after I'd become a nun. But she had this very nervous meeting with Lama Yeshe. I know she became very vulnerable in the meeting. I mean, he's very powerful. So she opened up about me, and she would never do that. When she came out of the meeting, it was in Melbourne. She came out of the meeting, I could feel she was really vulnerable. I knew she liked this person. He touched her heart, but she was very vulnerable. So she always kept going. So her friend, my friend Adele Hulse, I went to school with her, you know, convent, Catholic convent. So her and my mum are really good friends. They sit around gossiping, drinking sherry together, you know, in Melbourne. So whatever, they're good friends. And Adele would always say, oh, your mother, she was about that Yeshe or that Yeshe, you know. She didn't mind Zopa. She met them and Zopa looked really humble. She could handle Zopa, but she couldn't handle that Yeshe, she'd say, you know. And I was thinking, oh God, Lama Yeshe's criticising my gurus, blah, 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 whatever, you know, whatever. So anyway, because she came out of the meeting and she said to Adele, he kept looking at the television while I was talking. But my sense is, you know, he touched her heart somehow. He got her. So then I heard this story that my friend, somebody told me this story, George, I think, I can't remember. A story that Geshe Nawandagi told years ago. The story about some bodhisattva. So remember a bodhisattva as a person, even lowest level, who's already got incredible power, totally motivated to only benefit others, life after life. And so they want to come back into life after life, meeting as many crazy people as possible, because that's grist for their mill, to grow their compassion, to become a Buddha. It's their training, you know, life after life, and more bodies as they get more capable. So there's this bodhisattva. Hello, come on in. Hello, grab a chair. This bodhisattva, there's one story that George told, that Geshe Nawandagi told, that this dude, he was a dude, like a dude, you know, like a dude. He just walked in the door. There's a dude, isn't it? So he could be a bodhisattva. He could, but you look, there's a bloke with a bun on his head, and there's another bloke with white hair. They're just blokes, you know, but they could be bodhisattvas. We don't know that because we're not clairvoyant. So this dude in a village, see, the job of bodhisattvas is to go from life to life to life to life to life, hooking eyeball to eyeball, one-on-one sentient beings to get a karmic connection with them. Why? Because you want to lead them to enlightenment. They're not ready yet, but you get them, you hook them, and then 47 lives later, when they're ready, they'll meet you again and you'll drag them to enlightenment. So they're really kind of long-term goal, these dudes, you know? So this bodhisattva, so of course there are various methods of these great beings, and this is in the Vajrayana as well, to hook people. The best one is peaceful. It's the one that works nicest. But if you're a bit thick, peaceful doesn't work. So he was very nice. He hooked all the people in the village, meaning they thought, oh, he's a lovely guy, he was. Well, he got them. He got a karmic connection with each one of them. But one old lady didn't notice. He couldn't leave her behind. So he discovered she had a beautiful garden. So he rode his horse through her garden, destroying it. Well, believe me, now she noticed him, shaking her fist and shouting and yelling. And of course, everybody else would chuck him out of town, this mean, ugly guy. He's not going to say, hey, I'm a bodhisattva, I'm hooking an old lady, you know, I've got to use lawful methods. No, he accepts the blame and he gets out of town, you know, but he's happy. He got her. He got a karmic connection with her. He hooked her. So as Geshe Dagi said, when it comes to bodhisattvas, it's better that we have a bad experience with them, we criticize them and shout and yell, than to have no connection. Are you going to hear the point? So this is scary as hell. So every time someone comes and abuses you, be so grateful, because you were so thick-headed, you didn't notice their holy qualities, but they just hooked you, because you won't forget them. Well, I think my mother won't forget Lama Yeshe. That's my point. She sat there in that meeting being my typical mum, who was a lovely mum, but she would have chatted away and she would have kind of run the meeting. He would have said, yes, dear, no, dear, 3 bags full, dear. But he didn't. He kind of showed he was bored because she was raving on probably, and she felt vulnerable because of it, and he kept looking at the television. She will never forget him. He got her. He hooked my mum. That's my thought. Are you with me, people? So there's another whole dimension of reality. We love to hear stories like this, but when it happens to us, we don't like it. Of course we don't, you know. You know, so this is why with your teachers, Like Lama Zopa, as far as I'm concerned, I made a decision, he's my boss. I've made a decision, he's a Buddha, I'm seeing him as a Buddha, and logically, if I decide he's a Buddha, that means whatever he does for me will be the action of a Buddha, which means it can only be perfect. That's impeccable logic. But when I'm sitting there at 3 in the morning, dying from the pain in my legs, exhausted, waiting for him to stop all the wretched prayers he's singing, you don't think he's a Buddha, I promise. You sit there thinking, doesn't he know I'm tired? Right? Is it not automatic if I've got delusions? But instead of that, I go, thank you, Rinpoche, for showing me my impatient mind. So it's, that's powerful. But you've got to think these thoughts first. So this is a stupendous level of practice. But it's another whole dimension, I tell you. And you've got to have some confidence that this is a possibility. Otherwise, it's chaos, Are we communicating, people? Because the job of being a bodhisattva all the way to Buddhahood is to rip the delusions out. So like the whole stuff we were talking yesterday, all the transforming problems into happiness. This is all we're talking about is that view here. So you've got two options. A person's mean to you. You have one option to believe that they're horrible, and how dare they do it to me and poor me, or you have the other option, it could be the Buddha showing me my mind. Which is better for you? It's very obvious, the second one, but it's just hard, that's all. So it's very logical. But we're very vindictive. No, they can't get away with it. No, they've got to be bad. No, we've got to expose them. We are that's anger, and anger is very vindictive. Do you understand? And it's all based on this, rooted in the belief that I'm right. This is the terrifying part of the samsaric mind. Fundamentalism. I'm right. It is what it appears, This is the killer. So this view is outrageous. And you think about the Dalai Lama. We think we're so clever because we like him. Oh, aren't we good? We recognize a holy being, Well, you know what? He's the cause of that. He has hooked every one of us, eyeball to eyeball, over countless lifetimes. Such that when we meet him now, he's got us in the palm of his hand. But he's got the Chinese too. They can't stand the sight of him. He must have ridden his horse through their garden. Do you see my point? Because the way a person appears to you and you respond to them is according to how they've connected with you. So the Dalai Lama must use sweet methods to get us, because we just think he's great. But the Chinese, they have panic attacks every time they say his name. He must have really ridden over their garden with his horse, but he got him. He still got him. So when they're ready, he'll lead them to enlightenment as well. So this is a very different view, I promise. And it's not easy to apply. We've got to have a very controlled mind to do this, a very powerful mind to see life this way. Meanwhile, be practical. If it is a gunman, it could be the Buddha, but don't be dumb. Do your best to get away, cajole him, do something, to stop him from shooting you if you can. Do you understand? Even call the police, it's okay, because he won't mind if it's a bodhisattva. But he's got to put these two views together, because it's not comfortable, Mm-hmm.
Would the trampling of her garden in that sense be a ripening of a negative karma?
Well, of course it would. It's obvious. I mean, she worked so hard, the poor thing, and he goes and ruins her garden. Of course it is. Of course it is. Absolutely.
So does that mean then that a bodhisattva can be the impetus of a negative karma?
Of course he can.
Okay.
The ripening of it, but it's for your sake.
Interesting.
It's your mother beating you. Your mother said 4 times to not eat chocolate. And you won't listen. So she has to use wrathful methods. She used peaceful methods, it didn't work. So now you've got to shout at you. So you're shouting and your tears come, you think mummy's mean. That is the fruit of some negative karma, but she activated it, but it's totally a lesson for you, isn't it? Do you understand? It's logical, we get that. Yeah. Otherwise, you'd say peaceful methods would have worked. You would have heard of it the first time. You would have been a quick learner. But for those of us who aren't quick learners, the bodhisattvas have to use wrathful methods. You see, have to shout at us. Anybody else? I could talk. Let's talk more about the bodhisattva path then. Okay, well, yeah. We did yesterday. Those outrageous verses, didn't we? On Friday, whenever we did them, I forget. It's all this outrageous level of transforming. The first level of practice is just simply the way things appear. Don't kill, don't lie, don't steal. Take life on face value. Here we get more advanced, more outrageous. These beings who've gone beyond, who don't need a body. The only reason they take a body is to be of benefit to sentient beings, And also, it's like, as I said, grist for their mill, to help them speed up their own Buddhahood. So all as we know in the literature, there's these two main techniques for even cultivating bodhicitta. We're talking the 8 verses is the highest level of these techniques for culminating in bodhicitta. So let's just start at the beginning of it. In the text, I think there's 2 main techniques they talk in Lam Rim, isn't it? The 7-point or the 6 cause and 1 effect method of getting bodhicitta, then the more radical one, which is the one that's called Lojong, mind training or thought transformation, which is that 8 verses is coming from that genre of practices. So there's a particular way that Pabonka Rinpoche presents it in the Lam Rim, which is a combination of these 2 methods, and it comes up to be 11 little techniques. So the first of these, the root one, this is again really important. All these words, we use these in a very casual way, but we need to define them very precisely because they're each quite precise in their meaning, quite technical. So the first of these 11 is the development of what's called equanimity. So like I said before, in the Hinayana level of path, the wisdom wing, there's the level of equanimity is where you have more kind of balance between your crazy up and down mind. That's equanimity in yourself, and within yourself, between the crazy delusions, keeping more steady. Here is very different. It's in relation to sentient beings. So from the point of view of equanimity, what it is, once you've accomplished it, would be this heartfelt recognition that friend, the object of attachment, one of the 3 poisons, enemy, the object of aversion, the second of the 3 poisons, and stranger, the object of ignorance. Okay, before we go there, go back a bit. Ignorance is the root delusion, okay? Primordial, ego-grasping, ma-rigpa, is this primordial misconception deep in the bones of our being that defines us as suffering and samsaric, such that when that is uprooted, we're on the way out of samsara. That's the realization of emptiness. That's the root delusion, and its function is twofold. It's like double trouble ignorance. Regular ignorance, isn't it? What colour's that, Robina? I don't know. That's called ignorance. But that's easy to fix. You tell me the truth, I'll learn it, and boom, I've got the truth. I think if we had that level of ignorance only, we'd get enlightened in a couple of years probably, because we're very intelligent. But the trouble is that this extra level of ignorance, which is the killer, not only do I not know the truth that it's purple, I believe it's blue. And I'm convinced it's blue, and nothing you will tell me. That's a vague example. In other words, not only do I not know the truth, I believe in a lie. So the killer is, because I'm attached to my lie, you have to rip away, like ripping the skin off your bones, ripping away the lie in order to fill up, to see the truth. So in the way here, ego grasping, the colloquial term for marigpa, what it's ignorant of is ultimate reality, and dependent on arising and emptiness, basically, the way things exist. That's what it's ignorant of. But what it believes is the double trouble part. It believes in the exact opposite. Not even a vaguely different view, but the exact diametrically opposed view that in fact so ultimately nothing has an inherent nature and everything is interdependent. But this ignorance believes everything has an inherent nature and is completely independent. So this ignorance not only doesn't know the reality of interdependence and emptiness, but it believes in the exact opposite and has since beginningless time. And then all the other lies are built on top of that. So this is the nightmare of samsara. So that ignorance has 2 functions, and they talk about it, well, one of them, many functions, but one of them is called, one function is, so in the first scope, when we talk about the 10 non-virtues, I keep mentioning only the 7. Buddha says, don't kill, lie, steal. Don't kill, steal, jump on the wrong partner. Then the 4 of speech, don't lie, don't badmouth people behind backs, don't abuse, and don't rabbit on about nothing. Then there's the last 3, which I like to put it this way, but it's sort of the beginnings of working on the grosser level of these 3. So the grosser level of attachment is, of course, they call it craving. It's like extra level of really grosser levels of craving. Your mind dominated by constantly wanting something more and absolutely distressed because of it. So you can begin to control the grosser levels of craving, the grosser levels of the first of the three, attachment. Then you begin to work on the grosser levels of anger, which is ill will, malice. Not just angry with somebody, but wanting them to suffer and never giving up thinking about it. That's the one that causes so much suffering on this planet. That's why the people go around killing and shooting kids at school, because they can't get rid of the anger. Can't let go of it. It's unbelievably horrible, that one. But the third one, there's this grosser level of ego grasping. In this where it functions here, it's called wrong views, which means it's really the mind of fundamentalism. Very narrow-minded, very ignorant, very small-minded, very fixed. And we all see that aspect of our minds. Like I said before, I am right and you are wrong. So there's zero sense of interdependence there, and it becomes like, you know, really narrow-minded, fixed ignorance. Fundamentalism, it's a great word for it. A racist. A person who's obsessed with their own view, everybody else is wrong. It's that aspect of ignorance which is so gross. So that level of ignorance is what's implied in those three. You understand what I'm saying? Now, the equanimity level, there are the three poisons again. So the attachment is for friends, the aversion is for enemies. But here, the third one, the ignorance manifests as indifference. Couldn't care less. Which is, and the object, of course, of that is strangers, isn't it? Do you hear what I'm saying? So there's different aspects of ignorance, different manifestations of ignorance. So then this equanimity, such that when you've got it, when it's a realization, what it would be this heartfelt recognition that friend, enemy, and stranger, and let's face it, there is no fourth category on this planet, because these are the objects in terms of sentient beings of the three main delusions, that friend, enemy, and stranger, this is equanimity, this is what it is, are equal to each other from one point of view. Their wish to be happy, their wish not to suffer. That's it. That's equanimity. So this is the first one. This is the foundation practice that then culminates at the 11th one with bodhicitta. It's this incremental growth, you know, of continuing to work on your mind, just like the wisdom wing. But here it's in reference to breaking down the self-imposed barriers that delusions have constructed between self and other. But equanimity is the starting point, the foundation, and it's very logical. So right now, okay, as Lama Zopa says, if we look at the friends, the objects of attachment, we do have love for them, and we do have compassion. So love and compassion are the essence of all the virtues, if you like, and even it can narrow it down to compassion. So we have love and compassion, there's no question. We do. But only for the first category. It's rare we have love and compassion for strangers. I mean, by definition, you wouldn't. And it's very hard to even begin to have love and compassion for an enemy, a person who's harmed us. So the usual mode of samsara, which we all buy into without question, is we have those who we're attached to, and we adore them, but as long as they do what my attachment wants. That's just natural. As long as what's my boyfriend's name? Sebastian. What's his name again? Who? Oh, this Jonathan. Sorry, Jonathan. I forgot his name. Sorry. It's Sebastian. I don't know who Sebastian is, honey. I've got no idea. Well, there you go. Isn't that interesting? I convinced you were Sebastian right there. That's very fascinating. So, anyway, so let's say Jonathan. It's very fascinating, isn't it? There's Jonathan, okay? There's Jonathan. So right now, of course, I absolutely adore Jonathan. That means I love him, and love is made Jonathan be happy. When he's happy, I am blissed out. That's love. And of course, then I will do anything I can to make him happy. I'll put my money where my mouth is. Because why? Because he adores me. Well, it sounds so brutal to think that we're so self-centered, but of course we are. Because I have attachment for him, which makes him look divine anyway. And then it stirs up my heart, and of course I love him, of course I have compassion for him. That just goes without saying. But when he leaves me for Mary, it's going to be very hard. isn't it? I mean, the heart is brutalized when that happens. So the attachment goes out the window and turns into aversion. Well, likely love and compassion go out down the toilet as well. It's very rare that that will continue. You hear it sometimes, but it's natural within samsara. That love and, for us now, as Lama Zopa says, the mind, our love and compassion are unstable. They're based upon attachment, you know. It goes without saying. And of course, all the more confusing because we only love and have compassion for those we're attached to, and we only are attached to those we love and have compassion for. It's really hard for us to distinguish. But this is what you have to do at earlier stages when you know your mind well. So then you've got the second category, which could easily be Jonathan once he leaves me, but let's just say another person, my ex-husband, Fred. Because he's harmed me. Because he's harmed me, of course. So aversion is absolutely in my mind, naturally. So when I think of that person, I see this unpleasant person. It's completely natural. Because aversion is now, you know, the lens through which I see this Fred. He's a horrible person. I remember his bad qualities. And of course I don't want him to be happy. I mightn't want him to suffer, but it's a struggle. But I won't spontaneously have love and compassion for him. There's no affection in my heart. My heart is not open to him. That's because aversion is there, because he's hurt me, and therefore there's no love and no compassion. This is normal world. You look at the world. The third category, 99.999% of the universe, they're people who've neither, in my memory, have harmed or helped me. So, of course, how do I feel about them? Completely indifferent. They can all drop dead as far as I'm concerned. This is just normal in the world. Nobody thinks you're cruel and mean. I always tell this story. When I opened my iPad one day, the New York Times, and the story on the left down the right-hand corner, the heading said, 350 people die in ferry accident in Tasmania. Of course, that's my people, that's Australians. So I go, oh no. And I read this, and I saw it, and it said Tanzania. And I said, oh, that's okay. Do you understand? Of course, I caught myself, and then I read the story and tried to have compassion. But it's completely natural. It's instinctive in us. Our people, my people, my football team. Like when my team in Australia is the Sydney Swans. There's Australian football called Australian Rules Football. It's hugely famous in Australia, popular in Australia. And our team is called the Sydney Swans. So they won this week, so I'm happy to watch the game. They lost last week, so I ignore it. I can't bear it, you know. When they lose, I just... And then I see the other team was the biggest number. You go, oh, no. It's automatic. It's aversion. You know. It's just completely natural. We never even question things like this. So equanimity. So the moment, in other words, this is the point. At the moment, our wish that others be happy and to not suffer is based upon whether or not they are kind to me. That means we only ever confine our love and compassion mostly to our dear friends, our poodles, our cats, and our babies, and our present husband. You kind of get my point. We can try and expand it to other people occasionally, but it's hard work. And we don't have a basis for it. But if they're not nice people, we will never have love for them. As long as, that's why we have compassion only for innocent victims. They've got to be nice victims. They've got to be poor, sad victims. We don't want to have compassion for mean people. So we're very limited, aren't we? It's based on attachment, basically. So what the Buddha is saying is profoundly limited. You'll never get far with that. It's completely samsara. So what we have to do is, he says, it's possible to have love and compassion for everybody. It is possible, but we've got to change the basis, and the basis is equanimity. So we're going to shift the basis from being, I love you because you make me happy, to I love you because you want to be happy. We know that. Your mother says, whatever makes you happy, darling, that's actual love. That's actual love. Whatever makes you happy, sweetheart. It's love, whatever you want. That's what we're trying to cultivate here. The basis for beginning to develop love and compassion. Equanimity is merely the basis to shift the view of ego from only the friends to everybody. And so the logic we use to get us to get that one is that everybody is equal. The friends, enemies, and strangers are identical to each other from this one point of view. Their wish to be happy and their wish to not suffer. It sounds kind of mild, but when we begin to hear it, it's outrageous. And when we really can practice it, the whole world looks different, you know. So but first you've got to prove it. How you do these meditations are using logic to argue with ego's misconceptions. They're not gooey emotional meditations. You've got to use logic to argue with ego's misconceptions. So you use any logic you like, you know. There's so many examples you can use. I mean, one really powerful example is, you know yourself, if you think right now, this second, put in front of you 3 people. On the left, a person who adores you, for whom you are a friend. Reverse it. You're the friend in this case. A person who adores you. And when they see you, they see friend. Now, have another person in front of you in the middle who can't stand you right now. And I think most of us have some people who don't like us. Do we not? Do we all agree with that? Do we know somebody at the moment who doesn't like us much? Okay, put them in the middle. And when they see you, you know that they're seeing irritated, annoyed, upset, ugly person. You know that. You understand my point? You're called enemy. Now put a person over here to the right, a person just enough to know they know your face. They're like a stranger. But you have had no effect upon them. You've neither harmed nor helped them. So for you, they see a very distant, boring person, don't they? So your beloved is looking at a divine, beautiful angel. Your enemy is looking at some horrible, mean person. And the stranger is looking at some boring person. Now, you know you're the same every time, aren't you? You don't suddenly put on a mask of indifference when you look at the stranger. You don't put a mask of gorgeousness when you look at your friend. Do you get my point here? So you are the friend, enemy, and stranger, aren't you? And they're going to write their descriptions of you, but you won't recognize. It's like going to be 3 different people, isn't it? But you know it's not true. You know it's not true. You know that every time your friend looks at you, you want to be happy and don't want to suffer. Every time your enemy, who thinks you're a monster, looks at you, you want to be happy, you don't want to suffer. There's no difference. You are the same. It's absurd. These overlays they put on top of you have no bearing on any reality of who you are. Can you hear that point? It's logical. But we never question it. So it's logical that enemies and friends and strangers are out there are the same. They don't feel different just because they love you or not. They still want to be happy. In fact, if Jonathan does leave me, well, Robina, you know, he only wants to be happy. I mean, it's so brutal to hear that, isn't it? That's why he left you, because he wants to be happy. I mean, it's like the worst insult possible. So it's logically true that all the enemies, friends, and strangers, these fantasy labels we put onto people, these fantasy groups we've made up, based, I mean, it's so embarrassing, we should be ashamed, completely based on whether they like me or not. I mean, we're the center of the universe, basically. I mean, it's so embarrassing. And we really believe it. There are these beautiful people there, these ugly people, and these indifferent people. It's hilarious. But they are full just the same as each other. It's logical. You use many arguments to prove it's logical. Not an emotional thing. It's logical. But it's very hard to hear it. And then even if we do hear that the enemy wants to be happy, what do you mean? They don't deserve to be happy. And this is a heavy-duty thing we add on top. We absolutely will only want a person to be happy if they deserve. This is heavy. This has got zero to do with this reality. The thing we're trying to get inside is, like our mothers would say, put yourself in a person's shoes. We're trying to be brave enough to actually recognize within that person themselves. Whether they've harmed you or not is not relevant. Jonathan left his other girlfriend for me. For her, he is the enemy. But I don't care, do I? Because he's kind to me. This shows how we lie to ourselves, you know. I'm so happy he's kind to me. I'm prepared to call him beautiful. Yes, he probably deserved it. It's so heavy. How we are is so heavy. It's like shocking. We should be embarrassed. So enemy, friend, and stranger are equal to each other from the point of view of wishing to be happy and not wishing to suffer. It's massively powerful to get this clear. Then how do you think about it logically in your meditation, using logic to argue with ego's misconceptions. It's very powerful. And you do it every day as well. So how would you apply it every day? Well, it's easy. You know, you got your gorgeous kid, whom you adore, playing with the kid next door, whom you can't stand. Do you understand? All you got to do is think. That kid wants to be happy. He feels just like my beloved boy. And you think it, and you know it is true. You see the logic of it. It's not just some emotional thing. You hear how it has to be true. Which doesn't mean he's not a monster. It doesn't mean he's not a psychopath. That's not the discussion here. This is not the discussion. We're not discussing if they deserve, if they're monsters, or if they're good. When we say, I love Jonathan, because I give him all these good qualities I think he's got, so he deserves my love, you know. And when we think of the ex-boyfriend, we give all the bad qualities. So we see them only in terms of our projections. But that's not the issue. This is not the point here. The point is to get this bare bones recognition that every being, and in this case enemy, friend, stranger, are driven by the same wish to be happy and not suffer. Whether they're deluded or not is another discussion. So it really takes time. I mean, if you think of a politician, you can't say, let's say you don't like Mr. Trump. I mean, you might like him, I have no idea, I'm just talking. Let's say you can't stand Mr. Trump. This meditation is not to do, oh, he wants to be happy, therefore it's okay what he does. That's not the point. None of this is the point. It's a profound one, actually. It's got nothing to do with whether they're bad or good or psychopathic or deserve it or not deserve it. It's got nothing to do with that. It's this bare bones recognition that every single sentient being is driven by the same thing, the wish to be happy and not suffer. So it's huge. And this is the starting point in gradually growing, incrementally, these different qualities until they culminate in bodhicitta. So it's really quite huge, not just some sentimental, gooey feeling you try and cultivate. It takes time to hear the truth of this and then to act according to it. So the logic is, this is the foundation for the other practices, and you grow, where now that eventually you want every one of them to be happy. You want every one of them to be free of suffering. And when you get to the level of the bodhisattva, you know it's your job. So of course you'll treat the psychopath in one way and you'll treat the innocent child in another, because that's according to their needs. But you have equal love for both of them. This is what's hard to hear. You know, this is inconceivable for us in our attachment-based love. It doesn't make sense. We can't imagine it. That's the point, you know. So it's really huge, actually. Are we communicating? Any questions about that equanimity? John. That's hilarious. Well done. Good. That's wonderful. Yes. That's right.
So I'm going to tell you this awful story, but it's really short. My next door neighbor moved into this house. It's probably the third this person who bought the house, really cute, 1700s, you know, and all that stuff. And there were various reasons why the first person left. They wanted another one. She likes to redo houses. The next person had a restaurant down in Waltham, and that's an hour away, and they never used it, so then they sold it to this girl, and she bought it. And she was single, and I guess she was on the net looking for, you know, a partner, and she finally found somebody. So they went out together, and then he moved in with her. And every once in a while, my smoke alarm goes off because I had to renovate. And I had told the electrician he put it in the wrong place, that it was too close to the kitchen. So if I burn something like toast a little bit, even if I'm there, it'll go off. But I always shut it off, open the window, put the fan on, it goes off. Well, one day I went down to the post office and I forgot I had water burning on, you know, boiling on the stove. Came back and there were fire engines outside my house, which is very small. And it was really embarrassing because I was on the phone talking to somebody, and then I hear it and see all the trucks in front of my house. So I looked at him and I mouthed, "Is that mine?" And he goes, "Yeah." So I run back, open the windows, put the fan on. They didn't have to break the door down. I was right there, and it was just boiling water, but it burned the pot. But I was so embarrassed. The whole department's out with a big engine and all this stuff.
So where's the equanimity coming into this?
I went over to him. He was on his
Who's
lawn
the him?
watching
The boyfriend?
the next door neighbor,
Okay.
her boyfriend.
Yeah, okay,
now
go on.
they're married.
Yeah.
And I went up and I just crossed the barrier between, you know, like the driveway from my house to his, to be on the lawn and say, "Oh, I'm sorry, and thank you for calling the fire engines." And he goes, "Get the F off my property."
So what's
So I
the
said-
story about? What's this about?
I said to him, well, I mean, I didn't think we were friendly, and we never, you know, had dinner together. They lived next door. We all took care of our own stuff.
So why was he mad at you? What's the point?
Because I had left the thing, and he didn't know what to do without the thing. So he had called them, but I thought that's good, because if it was really something, he called somebody.
Okay.
The door
So what's this got to do with
happened be
equanimity?
open. How do I like somebody like that? He says,
Oh,
"Get
okay.
the F off our
No,
property."
you don't
People
need.
don't talk
Okay,
to me
good.
like
So that's
that.
your question. You don't need to like him. It's not the issue.
Oh, I
You know,
thought
not the
that's what
point.
you were
no,
talking about.
No, you're completely not hearing. It's okay. I understand what you're saying, because we hear all these words, we kind of mix them all together. No.
To go
This
at
is
some
not the
point.
issue. This is not the discussion. It's got nothing to do with liking him. Equanimity, when you've got it, is this heartfelt recognition that the mean people, the kind people, and the boring people are exactly the same as each other from one point of view. They each want to be happy, and they each don't want to suffer. So this is the point I'm making. It's hard for us to hear this simple statement because all we see is delicious person, ugly person, indifferent person. And that's naturally what we do because why? Because we have attachment and aversion. So what you're doing is interpreting him because he was rude to you, so he's in the enemy category. So then, like you just said, how am I supposed to like him? Well, we're not even trying to like him yet. You're trying to first recognize this bare bones fact that all the maniacs, all the nice people, and all the boring strangers are motivated by the wish to be happy and not suffer. So it's a very fundamental thing. We almost can't hear it. And that's the stepping stone for gradually learning to see sentient beings in a different way so that we can genuinely then wish them to be happy and wish them not to suffer.
To his wife, now she's married, and say, can we sit down and talk? Because she doesn't know about it. She
But I know, but why would you want to do that? But that's not the issue here. But now that you're discussing it, why would you want to? Why would you want? No, why would you want to do that?
Just to iron out this.
But why? Let him think what he likes.
It's still there.
Let him think what he likes. No. Is it a problem for you that he doesn't like you?
No, I just thought I'd use Buddhism to help.
Huh?
I thought I'd use Buddhism to help it. Also, the fact that I went over to thank him because I could have been anyone in the neighborhood.
I understand. So there's two approaches here.
Yeah.
The first level is the wisdom wing, and that's for you to look into your mind and see why it is you're upset about it. That's your problem. The next one could be the compassion part to be of benefit to them. That's another discussion. That's a second level. So the first level of practice is to look into your own mind and see that because you've got attachment to be liked, it was offensive to you that he doesn't like you.
She's an idiot. She lives in the middle of our neighborhood.
That's
Look what
right.
she did.
He might. You can't stop him. He probably has already said that.
Yeah.
I mean, honey, if he's expected to you, he's expected to everybody else. So that's up to you to decide whether it's worthwhile getting him to change his mind. Because you might. That's another discussion altogether. So,
Okay.
very good example. Thank you so much. Does anybody else have any questions? No other questions? So this equanimity is the starting point, the starting point. And the whole point of it is that we're trying to change the way we interpret the world. Trying to go beyond the labels of aversion, attachment, and ignorance, So the next little, Yes.
It's for the stream.
Mm.
Where do the labels come from?
Our mind.
Whose mind?
Your mind.
Well, I have always been perplexed by these labels of enemy, friend, and stranger.
What do you mean by perplexed?
I don't understand them.
You mean you've never had people you've disliked in your entire life?
No, but I
said, therefore, stop. So you have had people who've been mean to you?
I've had people who've been really mean.
So you've never felt anger or hurt or resentful?
Oh, no, all of that.
Okay, that's called enemy. It's pretty simple.
Well, I would never label them an enemy.
No, I know that, but it's just a convenient label here for objects of our aversion. It's just convenience.
Okay, so that's what I'm asking.
That's all it
Where
is.
do the labels come
The
from?
world uses them. Have you noticed enemy, friend, and stranger? It's pretty good labels, aren't they? You mightn't use the word enemy, it sounds a bit strong. But have you not noticed in the world? I know your point, but go beyond your personal opinion and look at the world. Have you noticed people harm each other?
Have I noticed? I'm sorry, what?
The people harm each other.
Of course.
Have you noticed animals harm each other?
Of course.
Well, animals have friends, enemies, and strangers.
Mm-hmm.
Some animals we don't care about, other animals we can't stand, we have terrible fear and panic of them, and some animals we think are gorgeous. Animals to each other. The universe, if you take the Buddha's view of the three main delusions of attachment, aversion, and ignorance, then enemy, friend, and stranger are just simply convenient labels for the sentient beings who are the objects of these three states of mind, and it's the universe. Look at the universe. Look at the universe. And we're trying to go beyond those three.
Okay.
That's the point. You see my point?
I see the point.
Yeah, good.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you're familiar with all these techniques, then this next one then gives rise to this hilarious technique. It's like you need your calculator for this next one. And these are little kind of techniques that have been developed over the centuries, by the great yogis. So this next one goes, all sentient beings have been my mum. And this is, you think, I beg your pardon. So this one is simply, like I said, you need your calculator here. You need to kind of look at the fact, the Buddha says, given that there are countless sentient beings in the universe, given that they're all beginningless minds, then it logically follows, I'll put this to a mathematician, he thought it was a load of rubbish. It logically follows that we've bumped into each other countless times over countless lifetimes. And logically, therefore, they've been my mother countless times. So what's the point of this? Well, the point of this is because in the Asian tradition, the old-fashioned view is that mothers are kind. But in our culture, I think we've got a different category of mother. They're the cause of our suffering, So we don't understand why Buddha wants us to think all beings have been our mum. It's trying to make us suffer or something, is it? So then the next point comes, then all the mother is kind. So this is, I think, a very, very powerful practice for us, especially if we think that our mother isn't or wasn't kind, which is not uncommon in our culture. And the fact of the matter is, yes, mummies, but just because they're a mother doesn't mean they're a saint. But I think we have a very strong assumption that because they make me, they have to be perfect. It's very fascinating, this. I don't know why we think our mum should be perfect, just because they made me, or that we deserve a perfect mother. It's very fascinating. It is very fascinating, that. So I think even this idea that the mother is kind sounds so absurd to us. First of all, I think it demands we look at the word kindness. Usually I think our view of kindness now is based on attachment. So if I go to the cafe and I order chocolate cake and she gives me an extra smile and an extra discount and an extra cream, I will definitely say she's happy. I mean, she's kind, won't I? Because why? Because she was kind to me. Even if she cracks a joke about this fat old Buddhist nun who likes chocolate cake, you understand? I don't care. She was kind. She gave me what my attachment wants. So I think our view of kindness is whether or not a person fulfills my attachment's needs. It's quite cruel to hear it this way, but look at our experience, So here, we're not discussing that type of kindness. We're looking at the fact, even the bare bones idea here is the very fact that our mother did anything at all to help us. That's what's meant by kind. So what we're trying to do here is try to cultivate a new picture of people. Because the next point is, if all beings have been our mother, then they've all been kind. It's just simply using a technique to help us open our minds to this possibility, which of course is so abstract for us in our culture. It's weird, So there's another point here. One is equanimity. 2 is all beings have been my mum. 3 is the mother's kind. But there's 3A and there's 3B. So the 3B is a really interesting one. And that it goes, all sentient beings are kind. Now this is hilarious to us and it doesn't seem evident at all, but let's look at the logic of it. And this is based on interdependence with its relation to sentient beings. So it goes something like this. I think we cannot disagree with this. This is scientific truth, I think. It's like this, that since we were conceived in our mummy's womb, I think it's true to say that everything that has facilitated our life up to now is the result of the work, the life, and the death of countless sentient beings. I think this is a fact. So I think of myself in my mother's womb. Yeah, mummy and daddy were the start. They facilitated by having sex, so their egg and their sperm came together, and that became the condition for my consciousness from the past life to find a new body. So first of all, thank you, mummy, daddy. Then my mother, I know how she was. She probably, when she discovered that she was pregnant with me, she then spent this 7 months, 8 months, I came out a bit early apparently, taking care of me, eating the right food, taking the vitamins, doing the right things, not eating the wrong food. So then that's, again, her incredible kindness that she did that. And the other thing was, think of all the things that she ate. I think she probably she ate meat. So she ate carrots, she ate peas, she ate, lamb chops, the rib of a New Zealand lamb. She probably ate cow's bottoms. That's steak, isn't it? Isn't it the bum of a steak? Isn't it the bum of a cow? A rump steak is the bum of a cow, isn't it? Isn't it? I'm just asking people. It's right, isn't it? That's why we call it a rump steak. It's the bum of a cow, right? So you eat the bum of a cow, you eat the rib of a lamb, she eats little fishies, all these sentient beings. And what did that meat turn into? It went through her mouth, turned into something, and came down and turned into my body. Would you agree with that? That what was my body when it came out at 7 months later? It was a bunch of fishes and cows and eggs, was it not? So how arrogant to think this is my body. How dare I? It's already the life and death of many creatures, even when I'm 1 month old, when I'm 1 day old out of the womb. Is this not scientific truth? But who thinks it? Nobody. This is me and my body, you know. So then since then, the nuns in the hospital, the Mercy Hospital, took care of me and put me in a warm water and put a little blanket on me. What was a blanket? It was probably made of lamb's wool. Thank you, lamb. And then my mother continued to feed me and have heating in the house and cooling in the summer and put clothes on me. All of these clothes, who made them? Creatures, you know, creatures. People made them in shops. The lamb's body was used, the wool of the lamb was used to put... So everything it's interdependence, but it's the work of human beings and sentient beings. Up until now, in this point of my life exists in dependence upon all those sentient beings. This is absolutely obvious. But we know this is true. We just think it's kind of interesting and technical. But, like, who cares? Isn't it? Because why? Because we don't care, because they're a bunch of strangers, you know. Now, you know yourself even, if your beloved child, let's say, makes you something. My mother had 7 children, and I think, they told me my sisters, when she died, that the house was full of things of her children, like little shoes and locks of hair and drawings and paintings and writings and school books. Mothers, every time they see like a little drawing of their child, they weep in happiness because they're seeing their little Bobsy. That's me, Bobsy, okay? But if you saw that piece of paper, that painting in a second-hand shop, you'd throw it in the bin. It's boring. But our mummies just see the work of their children, isn't it? Well, that's what the bodhisattvas do who understand this one. Everything they see is the handiwork of sentient beings. So they weep. There's this bodhisattva called Always Crying One. Every time he saw anything, it reminded him of the people who made it, so he burst into tears. This level of compassion, this level of ego gone away, the layers of ego gone. So everything they see, the food they see, the thermos, the envelope here, the cushion for my feet because my legs are too short, and the clothing to cover my fat naked body, and this to blow my nose in, and this to put the words in, they see it as the handiwork, which it is, of countless people. It's a fact. It's a fact, but we don't care. Because all we see, everything is through the lens of whether I like it. So I'm prepared to thank the person who designed this, because I think it's a nice design. So I think, oh, that nice person who designed that, you know. I definitely appreciate, it's not here, my iPad. I'm a real fan of Steve Jobs. I really appreciate Steve Jobs. So I'm prepared to thank Steve Jobs for his brilliance, because he gives me what I want. But if I see a Samsung, yuck, you know. How dare he steal from Steve Jobs anyway? And it's a phony design. I don't have any joy at all. I don't thank Mr. Samsung. So if it suits my attachment, I'm prepared to thank them. When I go to the shop and I buy navy blue knee-length socks. So if I find the pair that fits me, the right colour, the right shape, I'm prepared to think of the people who made it, but only if it suits me. So we're happy to see kindness, but only if it suits my attachment. But the fact, what I'm saying is, this is a fact, it's scientific fact. My glasses, I'd be not existing without my glasses. And these clever opticians now, they charge money for it, you know, for the lenses, because I've got like +11 here, you know. So this little girl got these very thick glasses. I mean, I probably have to have, you know, big fat, like, my nose would be broken if I had to have big fat glasses. But now I have these fancy thin lenses, you know. Because these clever people have thought about this to make the weight less on my nose. Everything is made by sentient beings. So then this is a powerful way, when you see everything, this is simple, this is not emptiness, it's not like emptiness. You've got to see something differently. All we're trying to do here is see things differently. We see everything through the lens of whether it suits me or not. Everything is seen through the filter of my needs. So if it suits my needs, I'm happy to say thank you. If it suits my needs, I'm happy to say I want them to be happy, but only them. So we're profoundly self-centered, naturally, all the time. But it's quite exhausting to hear it. But we should be delighted to hear it because we're trying to develop our marvelous potential, isn't it? These are simple little techniques. But they're powerful, absolutely powerful, you know. Are we communicating? And then all these little techniques, they culminate in that one we did yesterday, the Tonglen, the one in the verses, the 8 verses, you know, the 7th verse. Tonglen, giving and taking. That's where you do the shift. That's where the shift happens. Where it manifests as bodhicitta, you know. So this huge stuff, this stuff. It's massive, massive. And don't hold your breath, you know. It's huge. And the literature on this over the centuries is vast, vast and deep, you know. So one step at a time. I think we should go home. That's enough. I talked 3 times the pace of ordinary people, so it's probably like Monday afternoon by now. That's a fact. That's a scientifically proven fact. Yes. I won't. She's warning me in advance. See you, darling. That's fine. Good, darling. Good. Good. Yes. Sure. Yes. Yes. That's right. Uh-huh. 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 Good. So what do you say? Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Uh-huh. Was more stable, but it doesn't mean you got less compassion. That's that could be maybe more stable, because often the crying is I'm not criticizing. I mean, it could be sometimes with us it's based on attachment. It's a bit sentimental and kind of gooey, you know. So when you become more stable, you mightn't cry so much. But if it's going to mean that we're going to be closed off from others, something's gone wrong. I think we can misinterpret giving up attachment to become detached, and that's really not appropriate. Because giving up attachment has to mean becoming more loving, becoming more open to others, more empathetic, more soft. So we have to be skillful, I think. It's a good point. He's a funny guy. Who's this guy? Who's this guy you brought this time? It seems like it. Walter, hello, Walter. Happy to meet you. Well, listen, I don't know. Maybe Walter's going to feel shortchanged. We're stopping already, but I've got a feeling we've done enough. That means we should stop. Aren't you happy to stop? It's only 3:20. You can go to the movies or the football or something. $75. Oh well, give it to Walter. There you go. There you go. Okay, well anyway, you'll work it out. So and before we finish, any other questions you'd like to ask me? If we don't have to finish now, but I've got a feeling we've covered everything. We talked about emptiness, we've talked about bodhicitta, and we've talked about the wisdom wing. Go on, Walter.
Sorry.
Yes?
It's about suffering.
Suffering.
When let's say you're suffering, but if you become enlightened, you'll realize you're being influenced by suffering.
How do you mean? Say more, Walter.
Well, because the energy itself creates the suffering in our bodies. It creates the sensations of suffering. And your consciousness is trapped in there. But when you actually become enlightened, you move away from the area that's creating the suffering, and you realize you're just being influenced by it. You're still suffering, but you're being influenced, so you have a different view of it.
Okay, very good. It's an interesting opinion. Good, thank you very much. Thank you, Walter. Yes, Mary. Yes, go on.
Thank you.
Yes.
Just to follow up on what Walter said, that I'm active in the recovery community, and one of the things that's said is that, and I wonder if this relates to what Walter was saying, that pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional.
I see. So I suppose it comes down to it, doesn't it, Walter? And you too, we have to get our definitions clear, don't we, by these words? We can all assume we all have the same definition, but I wouldn't be surprised that we don't. So it comes down to... Huh?
The definition is the awareness of what's causing suffering.
No, I know, but what I'm suggesting is we need to be all on the same page with the definition of suffering. There's an assumption we all have the same definition, so here too with her point, but I'll leave it open. I'm not going to start discussing it. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Yes. Go on.
So
You always ask them.
one of the things that I do when people say I'm suffering,
Yes.
I ask them, where is it located? It has to be somewhere in the
I
body.
understand, yes, that's right.
And as soon as they locate it, it dissolves because
understand.
it's
Good
the
point.
lack of
No, I
connection
understand.
to
I
the
understand,
area
Walter.
that's created the
I
suffering
understand, Walter.
that's causing the most amount of pain.
Good, thank you so much. So what else, people? Any points to bring up before we go home? Marta. Yes, Mark. Mark and Marta. Going. Go on. Yeah.
On a deeper level,
Yes.
what do the Buddhists mean by happiness?
I'll tell you, very simple. Very simple. Happiness is what you get. Okay, in our view, in general view, the Buddhist way of describing what we think happiness is, and to some degree there's a truth in it, is that happiness is what we get when we get what attachment wants. So we call happiness when you get the cake and get the friend and get the praise and get the weather, and the thing that we want, isn't it? So that's what would you agree that's our method for getting happiness, in general, isn't it? So then, well, yeah, that's right. So then Buddha would say, no, he says, happiness is what you end up with when you've given up attachment and anger and depression and anxiety and neurosis. Another more simple way of saying it, a happy mind is a mind that is not attached, not angry, not depressed, not fearful, and not jealous, and not miserable. A happy mind will be a mind that's kind, loving, generous. That's a simple way of saying it even. So happiness, so have as many thoughts as you like, but as long as they're happy thoughts, kind thoughts, generous, connected to interdependence, wanting to help others, being content with yourself, that's happy, right? That's happiness. Virtuous thoughts are in the nature of happiness, and anger and depression and jealousy are in the nature of suffering. One way, a simple way of saying it, moment by moment. Do you understand? Yeah. So what do you mutter?
Days about the first two types of suffering, and I was just wondering if you could talk more about the pervasive compounded
The first
suffering.
kind of suffering is the suffering of suffering, when the bad things happen. The second kind of suffering is when the good things happen. There's a honey-covered razor blade, the suffering of attachment. And the third kind is the suffering of what they call all-pervasive. So the way to answer it more simply is if you look at the solutions. The solution to the first one is stop harming others. The solution to the second is give up attachment. The solution to the third is realize emptiness. Do you understand? Okay. Maybe that'll do. I'm sorry to shortchange you all, but I think we've done enough. I have a feeling. Walter didn't get enough. He just arrived, so maybe Walter's had enough anyway. It's okay. Good, Walter. Okay, people. So you people, I'll see you in a couple of years maybe. If you invite me back, I might come. If I'm not dead yet. If I don't die yet. I mean, I could die tomorrow, but never mind. If I do arrive, I am alive, I will come again to Boston, to my room, which I like best. Thank you. Thank you. I will, I promise. Thank you, people. Thank you, darling. I think you just got to look around and really check how many ways we're going to do it. You've got to find the one that fits you. That's what you mean. People think you check where you're at. You're fast. You're out fast. I think I'm good. Good job. Keep it. Trust your heart. Trust your good job. Mark, that's what I needed. So what's your name? Have I met with your name? You mainly study here? You do? Oh, good. I'm very happy with you. Yes, it's your name. Good, I'm very happy. Is it really?
Although I only came for a couple. Yeah.
Oh, good job. Cool. Thank you, people.
Thank you.
Thank you
You're
so
okay?
much.
You're all right?
Good, I'm happy to see you.
Thank you. Come on, come on. Thank you, sweetheart. Good, yeah. Good, sweet. I'm so happy. Well, I'm very happy. I'm happy. What's your name? Bonnie, I'm happy to meet you, Bonnie.
My honor.
Good,
Thank you so
darling.
much
I'm so
for
happy to meet you. You're great.
giving me the